Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities. Opinions and statements of guests not affiliated with Everag are their own and do not reflect the views of Everag. The accuracy of their statements cannot be guaranteed by Everag.
Hi, Mike McGinnis for Everag. The topic today is Brazil, and we have plenty to talk about, and we have a lovely guest, an insider, so to speak, in Curitiba, Brazil, that's in the southern part of the country. We want to say bom dia and tudo bem to Daniele Siqueira. She is a market analyst, also a part-time journalist with Ag Rural Commodities. Daniele, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Bom dia to you too. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Well, we have plenty to talk about. Of course, you can, if you're not feeling the market heat lamp on you, then I'd be surprised. A lot of people are talking about Brazil right now, South America in general, about production and whether it will move the market back to a positive area or not. But let's frame this up first off, Daniele, for those that don't know. Brazil is a big country. There are a lot of different stages of production going on right now. You have harvest in Mato Grosso in the northern part of the state or center west, but the harvest won't get started in the south for a while. And I've also heard that planting in some part of the country just finished not too long ago. So give us a feel for the different stages of what is actually going on right now with soybean and corn production.
Right. As you said, Brazil is a huge country, and our soybean crop calendar depends on three factors mainly. So the main factor is location, of course, because it's a huge country, but we also have two other factors, which are whether or not a state grow a second crop after soybean harvest, and also the weather patterns. So, for example, right now we have harvest in several states of the country, but we have two states that are the leaders of the harvest pace, and those states are Mato Grosso in center west and Paraná in the south. Those states are 2,000 miles apart, but even so, they have a similar soybean calendar because of those other factors I mentioned. So sometimes we have two states at the same latitude, but for those other reasons, they have different calendars. So it's a little more complicated than north and south because we can have states that plant together being in the north and being in the south at the same time. And we will have harvest until May, for example, in Rio Grande do Sul, which is our southernmost state, but also in Piauí, which is in the northeast of Brazil because of their weather patterns. So it's a little complicated, and we'll have harvest from January until May in Brazil.
And for those that are tuning in, you can see behind me the map of the state of Mato Grosso. And if you can see the circle, that is the town of Sorriso. And as Daniele just mentioned, when soybeans leave on a truck from that town, it takes roughly a week to get to the port of Paranaguá, which is the same distance between Iowa in the U.S. and the Gulf of Mexico in Louisiana. So it gives you the sense of how big the country is and how far those beans could be traveling. I did see, Daniele, a photo or a video actually of some of the soybeans in Piauí, which is in the northeastern part of the country. And those beans haven't even flowered. I mean, they look good, but they haven't even flowered. So they're in, of course, a slower stage of production. Farmers in Mato Grosso, as I understand it, are about 12 or 13% harvested as of January 22nd. Is that correct? And what is the pace of their harvest? And what are some of the yields that you're hearing coming out of that state?
Okay, that's true. That depends on the source. Our number for Mato Grosso until last week is 16%. Other sources say 14, 15%, around that. Well, Mato Grosso was the state that had the biggest impact of our dry, hot conditions that we faced until December. Mato Grosso is our top producer. It normally accounts for 25% of our Brazilian production, so it's a huge state, and it was very, very complicated for Mato Grosso until December because they had very irregular rains and very high temperatures, even by Mato Grosso standards. So they have lost about 90 million metric tons of their crop. It's about 20% of the crop. Yields so far are pretty bad because the first areas were the most affected. I cannot tell you yields in bushels per acre right now, but I can tell that they are up to 50 or 60% lower than normal at this point. Areas planted later will have better yields because weather conditions became more favorable from mid-December on. But even so, Mato Grosso already has big losses, like I said, with 50 to 60% yield losses in some areas.
And some private analysts have estimated that the yields are coming out around 35 bushels per acre, 20 bushels less than expected. Your numbers are even worse. So I'm sure because of it's a big country, though, Daniele, do you see that the yields will vary? In other words, some yields might not be as bad in some parts of Mato Grosso than other parts because of how big the state is?
Yes, absolutely. And in some areas, farmers really waited for better conditions in order to plant. So we have clients in Mato Grosso that should have finished planting by the end of November, but in late December, they were still waiting for more rains to start planting. So those farmers finished their planting in early January after rains became more regular. So those farmers will have better yields for sure. But at the same time, they will not be able to plant corn as a second crop because they will miss the planting window. So that's a price to pay. But they prefer to wait and have a good soybean crop than, plant earlier and then have a crop failure.
What is your reaction, Daniele, to some of the private analyst estimates? USDA, of course, was lower on their estimate this month, but also there's a producer association group in Brazil who is basically saying estimates should be way lower. This crop is worse than everybody is talking about. What is your perspective here?
The Producers Association has all my respect, but we have to remember that they are farmers, they are producers, and they get really concerned, really mad sometimes when they see losses occurring in their fields. So I don't think their number is quite right now because we still have many things ahead of us until we have a final number for Brazil. Our number right now that we finished on January 11th here at AgRural is 150 million metric tons. So it's in the middle of the estimate range that we have today. I think we have potential to have more cuts if we don't have more rains here in Paraná, for example, because Paraná was in very good shape until December. But since the beginning of the year, we have faced very high temperatures and irregular rains in some areas where soybeans are still filling pods. So we are having losses right now in Paraná, and some areas in Paraná still need good conditions in February to have good yields. So we are losing yields right now here in the state. And other states, like you said, are still flowering, are still blooming. So we still have a long way to go in Rio Grande do Sul, for example, which is our third soybean production state, sometimes the number 2. That state will harvest only in May. So we still have a long way to go. We can see many things until then. So right now, our number is 150 because Mato Grosso has lost many fields, has lost many metric tons of soybeans, but other states are still filling pods and many things can happen. So I would say that it will be hard to see a production above 150 million metric tons, but we can see less than that if weather conditions don't improve in some states.
USDA's estimate, just for the record, is at 157 this month. That was below 161 in December, so we keep falling. Again, as we talked about that association group, they're saying it should be 135. You're at 150 with more deterioration occurring. So it should be interesting to see where that number actually ends up. You mentioned that the high heat was the problem for Brazil's crop. The region that was the worst was the largest growing producing state in the country of Brazil, and that's Mato Grosso. Here we are in the middle of January. You're seeing pictures and social network types out there showing both the bad and the good. The market is really watching almost every day, what the next report is out of Brazil. Can you give us a feel for what you have done personally? Have you been out to any fields? Have you seen some photos from your customers? What are they saying to you?
I don't go to the field very often because I have many agronomists here who work with me, so that's their job. And they have visited lots of clients and also other farmers. They have had everything. Like you said, we have pretty bad fields, we have very good fields. And one thing that stands out for me is the situation in eastern Mato Grosso. I think I mentioned that before, but we have clients there who waited for better conditions in order to plant. And they were really desperate because of the weather conditions until mid-December. And then they planted, and now they are very optimistic because, okay, they won't have an excellent crop, but they will have a very good crop because it's raining now, and February will be also a rainy month because in Mato Grosso it rains a lot in January and February. So we have to keep in mind that this crop is soybeans, and soybeans have a very high capacity of recovery. So yes, some areas have already big losses and we cannot recover that kind of losses, but in other regions, in Mato Grosso and also in other states, we can still have a very good crop. So like I said, it's still a work in progress, and we will know what's the real size of the Brazilian soybean crop only in May.
Farmers are harvesting faster this year, Danielle. What about selling? Are they selling faster, or are they going to hold on to this crop as long as they possibly can and wait for a market rebound?
Yes, they have been harvesting very fast this year, faster than normal, and that's not good because they can do that because of the crop losses. Temperatures were so high. In some areas, we have so little rain that soybeans were ready for harvest before the normal dates. So that's why they are harvesting so fast, and that's why, too, they have bad yields in some areas. When it comes to farmers selling, they are stuck because farmers were waiting for higher prices because they believed that the crop failure in Brazil would take soybean prices higher, and that is not happening. On the contrary, we have seen lower prices. So they just don't understand what's going on. And actually, they are really mad at Chicago quotes because they were expecting higher prices. So they are stuck right now. We have about 30% of the Brazilian soybean production sold by farmers. It's more than the 24% we had a year ago, but it's less than the 5-year average, which is 42%. So yeah, farmers will wait to see what will happen with prices in hopes that prices will go higher sometime.
Danielle, I want to talk about the capacity for Brazil's farmers to store soybeans or store any crop really, but specifically for this discussion, how much storage capacity do farmers have for soybeans, and how long can they store? Because soybeans tend to deteriorate after a while, right? They don't store that great compared to corn.
Yeah, we don't have enough storage capacity for our crops, especially when we consider the second corn crop, which enters the market in the second half of the year. So last year, we had a storage deficit around 90 million metric tons, which is huge. And that makes farmers sell their production, no matter if it's soybeans or corn, very quickly after harvest. And that's why our exports are so explosive in the first half of the year when we are exporting soybeans, and in the second half of the year when we are exporting corn, because we cannot keep those grains here. We have to keep them moving to the other countries, to imported countries, because we don't have how to keep them here. And that's a big problem because although farmers are holding on to their soybeans right now, they don't want to sell because they are waiting for higher prices. They cannot keep those soybeans for too long. So when harvest is around 50% or something like that in February or in March, importers know that farmers will have to sell. And that is a big problem because Chinese importers, for example, they know that and they put a big pressure on export premiums because they can bring soybean prices to a target that they have, and prices here fall a lot just because Chinese importers do that. So they know our problems, the problems we have here. We don't have a storage capacity and we have to export those soybeans very quickly in March, April, May. So farmers wait for higher prices, but I don't think those higher prices will come because of that problem we have here when it comes to storage capacity.
What I'm getting here, Danielle, is the story for Brazil's soybean production this year has not been told. It's not even maybe close to being over because there's so much to the crop that's still dependent on weather to finish January, but also for whole month of February. What does the forecast look like for the end of this month and into February?
Well, we have some good rains forecasted for the rest of January in north central Brazil. That's very good for areas planted later, even in Mato Grosso, but also in other states such as Goiás, São Paulo, Minas Gerais, and the states in the northeast of the country where farmers plant later than other states. So those rains are very welcome. Although in some areas those rains might result in some harvest disruptions, especially in Mato Grosso, but it's okay. They are used to that because January is a rainy month in that state specifically. Here in Paraná, we could use more rains because some areas of the state are suffering with irregular precipitation and high temperatures. The good news for farmers here in Paraná is that temperatures are not that high, so we will have kind of cool temperatures here in Paraná for the rest of January. And for February, it's hard to know because, weather forecasts change every day, especially when we have an El Niño like we have this year. But for now, the forecast shows normal rains across the country, which is good. But the problem is that temperatures might be higher than normal again. So that will be a problem in areas that are not with very good rain so far, so we have to see. But the main concern for February is temperatures, for sure.
Okay. And one final question. I know this happens every year. Have you heard anything about farmers, organizing a strike or truckers organizing a strike either at the port or along the highways? I know that they seem to have very good timing every year when they call for a strike. What is the buzz there right now? Anything?
No strikes so far. I know that sometimes that happens in Argentina more than here in Brazil, actually. But yes, sometimes we have truckers trying to have a strike because they are not happy with fuel prices or something like that. But at least so far, we don't have any problem like that in this season. But we have to keep an eye because even with a smaller crop, we will have logistical problems as we usually do. We will have lots of soybeans being harvested in March and April, and that brings problems to us because we have lots of soybeans to take to the ports, and it's also complicated. But, we are so used to those kind of problems that we can manage. So it's a little messy, yes, it is, but we can manage.
Well, very good. And it does seem like the story is yet to unfold in Brazil. All eyes are on South America, as you know, and we do appreciate your time, Danielle.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Danielle Siqueira, Ag Rural Commodities Market Analyst, and I'm Mike McGinnis for Ever Ag.